You speak of our activity in Birmingham as extreme. Was not Jesus an extremist for love? Love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. Will we be extremists for the preservation of injustice or for the extension of justice? If I lived in China or even Russia, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest for rights. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal.
In the United States and around the world, the situation is terribly frightening. The drug pandemic is destroying the bodies, minds, and souls of youth in every part of the world. Entire nations are being destroyed by drug-financed international terrorism. During the middle of the 1970s, there was the worst genocide of the century in Cambodia. But now, famine and disease are wiping whole African nations from the map. Here in the United States, our farms are being driven into bankruptcy, while the world as a whole is plunged into the worst food crisis of the century. Our industries are collapsing, while 40 million Americans are below the poverty line. And a majority of our debt-ridden people are much less well off than their families were 20 years ago. We are now at the brink of the worst worldwide financial crisis collapse in modern times. I bring you terrible facts, but I also bring you a message of hope.
a man, but you have not killed an idea. We are here today, oh Lord, to see that that dream remains alive. We come with humble hearts, but strong minds and a determined spirit, that we will move ever onward and ever forward to see that justice is done. We pray for the Kennedy brothers who died. We pray for a man of courage such as Lyndon LaRouche. We pray for those who have not yet have their trumpet sounded. We pray for mankind who has a determined spirit to walk with thee all along the journey of life. These things we offer unto thee. Amen.
Give a tribute to Dr. Martin Luther King. I call upon John McKee of New Jersey. John McKee is the president and founder of the People's Association for the Memory of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He was the organizer of the New Jersey Martin Luther King commemorative holiday, and then the co-organizer with Coretta Scott King of the national holiday. John McKee of New Jersey.
Thank you. First, giving honor to God, let me tell you, Dr. King is happy. All that love Dr. King, you can feel proud because Dr. King is happy. You ask me, how do I know I marched with Dr. King? Long before we came here in 1963. God gave me a chance to travel with one of his messengers. Believe me, Dr. King was one of God's messengers. Yes! And here today, I find that the Schiller Institute is the only organization that is keeping the dream alive. They're dealing with justice. Justice. You know, and I find that one of our comedians, he went into a courthouse And in that courthouse, the sheriff told him, in here you will get justice. He said, yeah, but as I look around, he said, all I see is just us. You know, and you see, but here, today I see the world. And that's, it's just us, the world, you know. We are the world. We are truly the world. The Reverend Jesse Jackson said, keep the faith, right? So when we come here to be a part of keeping the dream alive, we're grow green, not cocaine. The dream must live on. Economical justice for all. Not to the MIF, genocide. How many more is there for us? And the most important of all is that if a president of these United States can give a man a pardon long before there is any indictment or conviction, you understand? Give him a pardon. How about this small fella? You might get something, right? Well, how about all them other fellas who doing wrong? They're getting pardons, right? You got police department killing people and they're getting pardons, you see. Well, here's a man that since 1978 been telling the United States how to save the farm, save your Africans. He was telling them that build rivers through Africa. Build rivers through Africa. Imagine what that would be, building rivers through that. They said Africa is the richest continent, right? Imagine if you ran some water through the richest continent. You might have an oasis out there. You see, the brother wanted to feed people. He wanted that the farms would continue. And now, the government, they want to do away with the fellow. Like, I find anybody who's standing up for right get done away with. God help. God help. We've had so many who stood up for the right and are down. But Dr. King said, if you haven't found something you're willing to die for, then you're not fit to live. And see, God give us a gift, and that is love. We love everybody. If we have to grab them around the neck and choke them, like, we still love them, you know, but we can't take this, you know.
Give them a love choke.
A love choke, yes. Forgive me for taking up so much of your time, but you just don't know what a pleasure it is to be here. I was with Dr. King in '63, and now I'm here with you guys. We've done great things over the years. In New Jersey, I'm prejudiced, and we had the city as a holiday, then we had as a state as a holiday, and then I find other states have did the same thing, but there is some states who have not done this. Why? The government says that this is the law. Dr. King, birthday. Let me see. That's the 15th. Every Monday, third Monday. However, the some of the states said, yeah, well, that's what you say, but we and so it be that on some states they do not celebrate Dr. King's.
They will when they get hungry enough.
They will when they get hungry enough. I see sign, feed the poor. I'm taking up too much of your time, but I just want to say that Dr. King, I know, is happy to see you here because there's not many people left who are keeping his dream alive. They're not marching for, you know, they're staying home, bourgeoisies with their nice cars and homes. And there's no need to march, you know, I can sit here and watch it on the TV, but you know, you're out here for a cause. Stand up for the cause. And we dedicate ourselves to the dream. How about you?
Yeah.
It shall never die. How about you? Do you agree that it is immortal?
Yes.
All right. Join me then, because we should organize an international holiday for Dr. King and what he stood for. International. You know, we have done it here in the United States, right? Imagine if we could get the world, perhaps if all of the different countries and states and the peoples assembled here by the Schiller Institute, united, and we had a march like this one in all over the world. we must solve the problem of economic first. We got to solve that problem. People want to eat. They need to eat. People want to live. They need to live. I just want to say, God love you, but I love you too. Excuse me. I forgot. There was a young man that Brother Dennis Speed, a young man who introduced me to the Schiller Institute. I'm not holding on to him now, you know. This gentleman here is not Brother Speed. I was just wanting to caress this fellow. All right.
A leader of the Schiller Institute in the United States, the man who coordinated the first Martin Luther King March of the Schiller Institute in Washington, who is also the Northeast Director of the presidential campaign for Lyndon LaRouche, Dennis Speed.
I'm very proud to be here today. I'm very proud to see all of you here today. Because I know how you got here. I know under what kind of duress you came. I know how much people tried to stop you from coming. I know how much people tried to tell you one thing when you knew something else. And that you're here because you understand that despite the fact that there may be a few people out there that don't believe that Martin Luther King was a great man, that you know better. Dr. King's greatness is not a greatness because he is a black man. He doesn't have a holiday because his skin was black. Dr. King has a holiday because he represented the best of what America was all about. Dr. King was a true American in a time when there were few Americans. We have a situation, many of us have read Dr. King's writings, and in Dr. King's writings he talks about a quality of divine love. He uses a term in his talking about this quality of divine love. It's called agape. A-G-A-P-E. Love of the divine. And this is different than the love of a person because you like him. It's different than the love of a person because that person is righteous. It's even different than the love of a person because that person possesses something divine. The divine love that a man like Dr. King exemplified was because he realized that he loved man because God loves man. And as we wish to imitate him, we have to imitate him in that. This is the problem. This is the problem of our United States. This is the problem of our administrations. This is the problem that we have in our politics. It is a lack of divine love. It is a lack of agape. It is a lack of Dr. King. And so the celebration of the holiday of Dr. King is urgent and is necessary for Americans. It's urgent and necessary for them to grow up and to understand that the man was not great because of the color of his skin. He was not only great because of the content of his character. He was not only great because of the quality of his mind, but he was great because of the integrity of his soul. What is urgent to understand is that that soul of Dr. King is in every one of us. We understand that. We recognize that when we want to talk about the question of injustice, we're talking about injustice done to the soul of every one of us. It is unjust for a man on Wall Street to make $50,000 with a single phone call and have someone downstairs starving on the street. It is unjust for the government to legislate that you can pull the feeding tubes out of a 70-year-old grandmother or grandfather because they can't defend themselves. It is unjust for farmers to be taken off the land when all they want to do is grow food to feed you.
And themselves.
And so we see these cases of injustice and they cry out to be fixed. They cry out for a remedy. But then we look around and we wonder, we say, where are the leaders? Where are the people that we are to follow? I want to say to you that on April 4th, 1968, I was 16 years old. I remember the day very well. I remember when I found out that Dr. King was dead. And I remember something else about the next day, because something else happened the next day. The next day, the mantle of Dr. King fell to each and every one of you. The next day what happened was that each and every one of you was forced to consider for yourself whether you would be willing to do what Dr. King did. And I think that we are willing to do that. I think that there are people out here in this audience willing to do that. And that is one of the important things about having demonstrations and rallies and combinations of the type that we have here. We have here people from Minnesota, we have people here from Wisconsin, from Chicago, we have whites, we have blacks, we have Hispanics, we have people from all over the world in this crowd. And in each one of us there's something the same. There is a desire, a burning desire, an angry desire for justice. There is an angry desire for justice which consumes all of the differences that might separate us. Yes, we understand that we come from different walks of life. We understand that we come from different corners of the world. But there is something that unifies all of us. We are all fundamentally human. We are all fundamentally creatures of God. And we understand that it is our journey. It is also our joy to represent and to replicate and to imitate that quality. As King did, imitate the quality in, I will even say, the Savior, Jesus Christ.
Yes! That's the one.
Dr. King imitated Jesus Christ. And he imitated St. Paul. You know, St. Paul was beaten, and he was jailed, and he was tortured, and he was stoned, and he was beaten and left for dead. But that did not stop Paul from campaigning and evangelizing the Word. And he says, though I give my body to be burned and have not charity, I am nothing. Very important idea. Though I give my body to be burned and I have not charity, I am nothing. Very important lesson for all of us to learn. Very important lesson for the people that are supposed to be in that White House soon to learn. Well, the problem that we have is that freedom is now in the street. Maybe it was always in the street. And the problem is that we have a problem that they tried to wipe out the memory of the civil rights movement, the true civil rights movement. They try to wipe it out in the classroom and in the courtroom. And we see various films that want to try to portray various people, such as the FBI as the great white hope of the civil rights movement. I don't remember it that way. And I wasn't that old. I don't think it was that way. I think that it was you.
No, I wasn't. I'm 65.
I think it was you, and I think it was your parents, and I think it was your grandparents. And I think that it was a cause that was very much like a torch. A torch that was passed on from one individual to another. A torch that was passed on through the ages. And we have fought for these rights. Rights which are inalienable. You know, there's a term in the Declaration of Independence, which Dr. King knew very well. It talks about inalienable rights. Inalienable. We hold these truths to be self-evident. That man is born with certain inalienable rights. And among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Why is something inalienable? What does that word mean, inalienable? It means that nobody can take the rights away from you. And it means it because nobody can give them to you. There's no government on earth that gives you those rights. There's no individual on earth that gives you those rights. Those are divine rights. And when you have a case of injustice, when you have a government that exemplifies injustice, if you have a state, a nation that exemplifies injustice, you must snatch your inalienable rights from the heavens. If that is what you have to do to keep your inalienable rights, then that is what you have to do. And Dr. King represented that, and he marched for that. I have a particular case of injustice I'm here to talk about today in addition to the commemoration of Dr. King. Because I know the man, I've known him for 18 years, Mr. Lyndon LaRouche. I've known the man. There's one thing I know about Lyndon LaRouche. There's a lot of things that Lyndon LaRouche says a lot of people don't like. But everything that Lyndon LaRouche says is true.
Yeah, it's still the truth.
Now, it might not be the case that people like to hear it, but it's true. And it is, just parenthetically, see, I happen to be partial to Malcolm X. I'm not going to get into a whole thing, but I remember that Malcolm said a lot of things that people didn't like, but they were true. And he may have been killed for it, but that didn't make what he said false. Dr. King may have been killed for what he said, but that didn't make what he said false. And Lyndon LaRouche could be killed in prison for what he is saying, but that doesn't make what he says false. And it's a very important lesson for many of the rest of us to learn. You see, great men speak a language that very few of us fully understand, but we all recognize it when we see it.
Yeah.
We all recognize it when we hear it.
Yeah.
We know it because we can tell the music of the language of a great man. And though we may not be able in ourselves at the particular moment to understand everything, or to be able to relate to everything, or to lead in the way these great men lead, one thing we know is that it is that greatness which represents the divine spark in man. And this is what we came here to basically say about Dr. King. What I came here to say in particular about Mr. Lyndon LaRouche, who is a personal friend of mine, as I said, and I came here to say it about you. I came here to say it about you because I want to second John McGee's proposal about that international holiday. And I'll tell you why. Because I believe that when you have demonstrations and you have rallies and people gather in the name of the righteous, that in that crowd, in that demonstration, somewhere in that rally, there are children. There may be single children, a single child, who is as great and as blessed as Dr. King. And the way that you've got to go out and find that child is you've got to assemble. And you've got to assemble and you've got to look among your numbers. Because he is not to be found in the corridors of power. He is to be found in the poorness and the poverty of the streets. He is to be found among you. And that is the principle, more than anything, I think, that I have learned both from Dr. King and from Lyndon LaRouche. So I want to say to you, I celebrate you. I come here to thank you for what you have done. I know many of you personally, and I know what you came through to come here. I'm glad you came here to support us. I'm glad you came here to back us up. This is an initiating action. This is the beginning. We go from here, we form truth squads, we form justice squads, we go into every church, we go into every community action agency, we go into every corridor, every gully, every back alley, and we take the word back that there will be a no to economic injustice, we say no to social injustice, we say no to racial injustice, we say we want justice now in the memory and in the image of Dr. King.
I now call Barbara Goudot from Zion, Illinois. She is an ordained missionary. She went to Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia, where she was born. She's a veteran in the battle against the Ku Klux Klan in Zion, Illinois, and a fighter for the NAACP. Barbara Goudot.
I love you. I love God. I love my enemies, but they're going down. I thank God for this opportunity for all of us to come together for this cause. But while we are celebrating, while we're deliberating, while we're parading, we must get our minds set on our goals after today. We have some things we must do. We can talk, we can boo, we can read, we can sing, but until we act together, we will perish totally. Mr. Lyndon LaRouche is a God-sent messenger. My dear brother, Martin Luther King, he passed this way and left a legacy. The live ones have to carry it on. And when God sends somebody that speaks from 1 Corinthians 13th chapter about love, the poor, the downtrodden, the crippled, the aged, whosoever is living in the image of God should jump on the bandwagon with prayer, love, and wait on God. He will not be killed. We do not buy kill. We're going to buy, pray, and wait for God's love to keep him alive until these things come to pass that are needed in this government. Amen, amen, amen. Let me hear you out there.
my great honor to call O.G. Christian, the former president of the West Philadelphia NAACP, a member of the Carpenters Union. He went to Western Europe for the Schiller Institute 2 years ago with the Ben Franklin Brigade. He's a proud fighting associate of the late Hewlin Jack. I call O.G. Christian.
Yay! What's your name? I go to Yale.
To the chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I'm O.G. Christian, former president of NAACP West Branch, having served 12 years there. We are here today in the interest of memory of Dr. King. I was here on the 28th of August in '63, and I'm also now in my 35th consecutive year as a dedicated worker of the Civil Rights Movement. And when I would complain, I remind myself that we have not as yet given as much as Dr. King. Dr. King had a great impact on this nation, probably a greater impact than most of our past presidents of the nation. I am here too in the interest of Lyndon LaRouche. We come to send a message to our illustrious president who will soon leave office. And we say to the president, pardon LaRouche before you leave office on Friday.
He's going to get us something.
LaRouche is opposed to the foreclosure of the family farm. And I say to you, if we lose those family farms, we will be hungry. Because when the big boys own the farm and all the land, they're only going to grow what they make lots of money on. And we will not have a balanced diet. And when we buy food, we'll pay whatever they choose to have us pay. Many of us will starve to death. And of course, I have a feeling they could care less. We in this country are often complaining about ism from the outside. Let me assure you that unless we start pulling together, we will kill it from the inside. We must work to make this one America, or there ain't gonna be no America for any of us. We have everybody here from every corner of the globe. The whole world is watching us. And if we don't make it work here, it's not going to work any place else. We must rise up and offer leadership to the world. I am very grateful that in spite of the adversities in this country, we do still have freedom of speech. And we thank God for that. Now I hope that each of us will get home safely. Thank you very much.
I ask the Reverend Coakley to lead us all in singing We Shall Overcome.
I'd like for everyone to kind of move in the sway, right? We shall overcome.
I do believe.
important now will be presented. It is a personal message from Helga Zepp LaRouche, the founder of the Schiller Institute. I want everyone to know that here we don't just have people from the United States. There are freedom fighters from Peru, from the Dominican Republic, from Panama, from Mexico, from Germany, from Italy, and the nation of France. Helga Zepp LaRouche founded an international Schiller Institute, and reading her personal message to all of you today will be Renata Müller-de Pauli of the Schiller Institute from West Germany. I want everyone to welcome Renata.
You who have come here today from different social and ethnic groups and from different countries, you are fighting for the most precious thing we as human beings can possess. You are fighting for the inalienable rights of all human beings on this planet and for the dignity of man in the image of God. And is it not a poor, suffering world? Is it not a shame that today, in the 20th century, there are literally billions of people who are condemned to death by hunger and disease? If the policies of the leading governments are not changed, Black Africa is already dying. Most people in the developing countries will be killed if these policies are continued. The people living under communist dictatorships are threatened with starvation and already now are living in a situation in which they see little hope. And last but not least, there is a growing number of very, very poor people in the United States for whom cruel poverty has taken away the basis for a dignified human life.
That's right. That's right.
There is one man in America who has taken the burden and misery of all the people on this planet on his shoulders. Who has devoted his life to develop programs and solutions to improve life for every individual, both economically as well as culturally and morally. This man, Lyndon LaRouche, has now been convicted in the most incredible political show trial in US history. This injustice must be reversed. Many good and moral people in the whole world understand that if he would be eliminated, no other nation and no other people on earth would have a chance. Therefore, let us all appeal to President Reagan that he should undo this injustice and pardon Lyndon LaRouche. Many of you will remember that 4 years ago we pledged in our march on Martin Luther King Day that we will come back and come back until we have won human rights for all of mankind.
All right.
So be it.
That's it.
So help us God through our arms.
I have a very great honor. My name is Warren Hammerman. I'm the chairman of the National Democratic Policy Committee, Lyndon LaRouche's Political Action Committee in the United States. And I will read a message to you from Lyndon LaRouche. words he wrote on the occasion of Martin Luther King's birthday. These are Lyndon LaRouche's words to you. By the time of the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.'s death, the doctrine of political equality for which the civil rights movement had worked had been established as a principle of federal policy shaping. Nominally, all persons had secured virtually equal political right to a ticket on the train to economic and related progress. Look back to March 1968. See the long lines of the disadvantaged groups queued hopefully at the ticket offices of the Opportunity Railroad. Each person in the lines sighs with relief and a little joy as he or she receives the long-awaited ticket and then moves to board the waiting train. Each breathes another sigh of relief at discovering that, just as promised, there is ample seating for all. They sit, waiting for the train to start its journey. Departure time comes and passes. The train has not moved. New boarders pass the information that the departure is being delayed until all the travelers have received their tickets and boarded. They sit, and they sit, and they sit. Days pass, weeks pass. The dust has settled thickly all around the car's interiors, while the ticket offices are still issuing tickets. But the railway service has been shut down. We must not permit our frustrations of the past 2 decades to underrate what the civil rights movement won up to the time of Martin Luther King's death. But we must go further to establish, in fact, the principle that every child and youth of whatever family background has a right to equal opportunity for the fullest possible development of his or her potentialities. Equal rights to seating on a train going nowhere may be better than no seating at all. But we must not accept nowhere as our destination. The train to opportunity today is moving again. It's rolling backwards, downhill, while busy bureaucrats here in Washington run back and forth from one end of a train to another, shuttling passengers back and forth in the effort to equalize the worsening misery. The general problem our nation faces is that we are going nowhere but backwards and very quickly. We can't accept that. No. There is no part of society, no constituency which does not have the same interest. There is no people of any nation which has any different interest than that of any other nation in this matter. We're speaking of food for peace. We're speaking of the future of hundreds of billions of unborn souls, without whose success our lives mean nothing. That is the common interest which unites each and every one of us, such that there is no distinction among any of us on this issue, on this cause, on this interest. We must fight with love of humanity by thinking especially of those hundreds of billions of souls waiting to be born. Thinking also of those whose martyrdom and other sacrifice gave us what is our potential and our debt to them, respecting what we pass on to the future. We must think of our lives as something lived from moment to moment, but as a very small piece of experience with a beginning and not too much later an end. And think of our lives not as things that are lived for pleasure in and of themselves, but as an opportunity to fulfill a purpose which is reflected in what we bequeath to those hundreds of billions of souls waiting to be born. To do this, We must fill our hearts with love for our fellow human beings. A love called agape in the original Greek, caritas in the Latin, and charity in the King James Version of the Bible, as referred to in St. Paul. We must work with one another in the sense of that attitude toward historical humanity. Humanity which is a great family which owes to its past generations and the present owes to its future generations. The love uniting that family is in the matter of works. Works are the practical expression of faith, from which faith derives the strength to fight and win this war. If we can do so, I, Lyndon LaRouche, am certain we shall win. Thus, in this terrible moment of humanity, when civilization as we have known it for hundreds of years threatens to be removed from us in the coming 2 to 10 years or so, as we face the risk of losing civilization itself, we also have the possibility of heroic solution to this crisis, of becoming generations which in our time, faced with the cup of Gethsemane, accepted it and thus perpetuated in the imitation of Christ the cause of salvation of future souls. Those were Lyndon LaRouche's words. We now move to address the international anti-Bolshevik resistance movement. Webster Tarpley, the president of the Schiller Institute in the United States.
Thank you. The Schiller Institute of the United States is happy to salute the participants in this demonstration in honor of the memory of Dr. Martin Luther King and for the preservation of his living tradition. Dr. King was a prophet and a dreamer. He was a man who stood up to be counted at the risk of jail and at the risk of that bitter cup of martyrdom which he did not refuse because he believed that they were causes of justice that were more than worth the life of any person. And in that cause, Martin Luther King gave all that any person could give. And yet, his life's work remains unfinished. It is a task that is up to all of us to complete. Dr. King stood for justice. And yet all around us today, we see a growing arrogance and tyranny on the part of government. And even more by that sinister, secret, invisible government that controls the institutions. Now, whatever certain movies of today may try to suggest, the FBI was not a part of the civil rights movement. Amen. The murderers of Dr. Martin Luther King, just like the murderers of Lincoln, of McKinley, of Kennedy, and so many others, those murderers were the Wall Street bankers of the Eastern liberal establishment. And those Wall Street bankers are still thirsty for blood today. Today, they thirst for the blood of our friend Lyndon LaRouche, a man who is, in his own way, like the prophet Joseph for our time. LaRouche has been framed up, and he has been convicted. And on the 27th of January, LaRouche and 6 of his friends will be sentenced across the Potomac in Alexandria, Virginia. Now, President Reagan pardoned LaRouche and give his friends the pardon they deserve before you leave office. Because LaRouche is innocent and the mad dogs of your Justice Department are guilty, just the way they were back in the days of Dr. Martin Luther King. Now, the reason that LaRouche has been framed up has a lot to do with the man with the mark of the beast on his forehead, Mikhail Gorbachev, the dictator of Russia. He's the keeper of the Soviet prison house of nations, where whole countries are swallowed up. The Ukraine, Armenia, the Baltic states, and countries like Hungary, Poland, East Germany, and others. More than 200. Gorbachev is forcing his slaves to work overtime to get ready for war a few years down the road. My friends, Dr. King was a brave man who knew how to face death. He gave us an example. He said that a person who fears death cannot be free. And he said that a person who is filled with fear cannot carry out his moral duty to stand up and be counted. We cannot be intimidated by court decisions that are illegal and unconstitutional. We cannot be dismayed by vote fraud in elections or by a corrupt and servile Congress. The survival of this nation and the world through the next decade will depend on the ability of citizens like us to stand up for what is right. As Dr. King taught us, and he said it again and again and again, the American way is the right to protest for the right. And let this movement never lose sight of that fact in the terrible time of testing that is to come. So let us go forward to save the life of Lyndon LaRouche and to secure victory for the cause of social and economic justice in the months and years to come. Thank you.
Now, William Nezaway, the president of the American Ukrainian Political Action Council of the United States, a courageous and outspoken leader within the East European community in the United States against Soviet abuses and Soviet tyranny. I call William Nezaway.
Don't clap too hard, you may be sorry to do. But we'll try not to disappoint you. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, and all you young people that I see here today, my topic, like the others before me, is justice in America. When I passed the Supreme Court today, I noticed the inscription, justice, equal justice under law. This is no longer true in the United States. And I'll give you some examples of injustice by the United States Department of Justice. The Criminal Division, which the Office of Special Investigations is part of, they established themselves in 1979 with an amendment to the Immigration and Naturalization Act. It was passed through Congress, known as the Holtzman Amendment, introduced by former Congresswoman Elizabeth Holtzman, a fellow traveler who disregarded the truth under the United States Constitution. This law was intended for any person who lied on his or her naturalization application, but basically applied only to those who were labeled as Nazi collaborators. Those persons who may have frivolously lied to save themselves from execution by being repatriated to the USSR after World War II. Tens of thousands of humankind committed suicide, killed their children, rather than return to the USSR to certain death. Moscow accused all who left or forced by the Nazis as traitors to the motherland. I'll give you some examples. Frank Wallace, a Polish national and citizen of the United States, was one of the first victims of the Holtzman Amendment. He was accused of being a Nazi criminal after a long civil hearing before 11 lying witnesses. Wallace lost his citizenship. Witnesses swore beyond a reasonable doubt that they saw Wallace kill innocent women and children. He had 3 heart attacks and is in debt for life, and he was ready for deportation. In the meantime, his attorney went to Germany and found records that Wallace, then 16 years old, was working on farms in Germany far removed from the scene of the alleged crimes. What did the Justice Department say? we're sorry. When Wallace asked who would pay for his expenses, he was told there would be no compensation. You had to defend yourself. Let's take the case of Mykola Kowalchuk, a Ukrainian national, a United States citizen, who was harassed by the Justice Department for 20 years after destroying his and his family's health and his life savings. The civil court found no evidence to give him a guilty verdict, and there are many others. OSI are collaborators of the dreaded KGB and are using KGB fabricated documents in order to have their former citizens deported to the USSR for execution, as was Fedorenko. The justice, as of this hour, never proved any of these persons from Eastern Europe because no criminal trials are permitted under the Holtzman Amendment. In 1988, I instituted a public hearing under the impartial chairmanship of Samuel L. Evans, a well-respected citizen known for his integrity. Mr. Evans is national chairman of the American Foundation for Negro Affairs. Witnesses were called from as far as California, which also included former Attorney General Ramsey Clark, who called the Holtzman Amendment a flawed law which should be repealed. He called Alan Ryan, the first director of the Office of Special Investigations, nothing but a liar. And that's what we have today in the Justice Department. We published in an 880-page book a shortened version of these 3-week public hearings, and are presently being distributed to every member of Congress, calling for the repeal of the Holtzman Amendment, no deportations of U.S. citizens without a criminal trial guaranteed under the U.S. Constitution, an oversight hearing over OSI's flagrant abuses of the U.S. Constitution. We cannot permit OSI and the Criminal Division to trample on the U.S. Constitution. Now, as to Lyndon LaRouche, which is parallel to the victims I just spoke about, U.S. Justice wishes to destroy and make criminals of honest citizens who spell out the truth as to what is taking place in government. Revealing the truth with credibility is counterproductive as far as our present justice system. Anyone here today, if anyone is strong and reliable in his community, can become a victim by the Criminal Division of the United States Justice Department. I say this without reservations. I know to be the truth. Justice does not care if you are truthful when they want to destroy a person whose credibility is untarnished, like Lyndon LaRouche. Amen. Justice will coerce weaklings to become witnesses against anyone they target. The Justice Department will use overzealous prosecutors to find innocent people guilty and make felons of honest U.S. citizens. Ladies and gentlemen, we must be aware of U.S. Justice, who has injustice to dole out to the selected victims. I call these persons victims since they truly can't be defendants under the justice system today. What has happened to this God-blessed America? It will take all of us to pressure the President and U.S. Congress to return honest justice to these United States. The pressure must continue without let-up until travesty of justice has come to an end. Thank you, and God bless all of you here today.
We have a very special visitor from representing the Free Chinese, Professor Yang, who escaped from Shanghai and has fought the Chinese communists. Professor Yang. He will be translated.
美国著名的人权领袖马丁·路德斯先生逝世的时候，我还是在中国上海的牛棚里进行劳动。
I was honored to participate in this rally in memorial of famous Dr. Martin Luther King. When he was killed in 1968, I was still in jail in Shanghai, China.
今天我自由了，并且有机会参加纪念这个大会，感到很高兴，而且很荣幸。
Now I'm free to participate this rally to memory of Martin Luther King. I'm so happy to be here today.
我们要谢谢马丁路德斯博士的这个精神，为中国的人权运动做一些贡献。
In China, there's a mass violation of human rights and the civil rights. We have to learn the spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King to eliminate the injustice of the whole world.
希望全世界支援和帮助中国的人权运动，为中国的民主、自由和人权，希望得到全世界的支持。谢谢。
I hope everybody here today will support all the people who are seeking justice and freedom. When I was in China, I thought that China was a mass violation of human rights. In the United States, they will do nothing like this. However, I found out today there is one of a great man, Mr. Lyndon LaRouche, was illegally, politically prosecuted. I hope that will never happen again with our effort.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The next speaker was one of the courageous individuals who was convicted with Lyndon LaRouche. His name is Dennis Small. He is the co-director of the Latin American section of the Schiller Institute. We are fighting to keep him out of jail as well as Lyndon LaRouche. I welcome Dennis Small.
Thank you very much, and with this type of support, with these rallies, not only in this country but around the world, we are absolutely positive that LaRouche will not go to jail 10 days from now. This must be stopped, and we shall do it. I want to tell you only one thing, in addition to what you have heard so far. Right now, in the country of Mexico, south of the border, in the course of this week, 50,000 Mexicans took to the streets to rally as we have here because the leadership of the resistance fight in Mexico, the oil workers of Mexico, and their leader La Quina have also been subjected to illegal arrests, illegal detentions, torture in jail. And every single person in every country who is trying to stop the drug bankers, who is trying to stop the Bolsheviks, who is standing up in the memory of Dr. Martin Luther King and saying, we will not allow this to happen in our nation, every single one of those is facing the same type of battle that Dr. Martin Luther King faced and the threat against his life that Lyndon LaRouche faced. We must support the battle in Mexico. We will be at the Mexican embassy later this afternoon to tell them we will not tolerate this treatment in Mexico. And I think that I can state on behalf of the 7 defendants in Alexandria, including Mr. LaRouche, that this battle will continue regardless of what they attempt to do to us 10 days from today. And with the struggle of the people here, we are encouraged that we can and shall go on to victory. Thank you very much.
As you all know, we've fought under the theme Food for Peace, which Lyndon LaRouche initiated last summer. Many farmers have joined us today, and our next speaker, Jack Hall, is the former president of the National Farmers Union in Virginia.
Folks, I'm glad that you are here to help us bring to the people of America and of the world the importance of food to your well-being. We're the people that visit you about 1,100 times a day, a year. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, 365 days a year. Can you all hear me? All right, good. I want you to be with me now. We'll tell you a little story. I'm not going to take much of your time. It's cold out there. A lot of people have had to wander away. I'm a farmer. I lost my farm.
Lord have mercy.
And just to let you have an idea that I'm not one of these young ones, I don't look like I'm 77 years old, do I?
Praise God. 77 years.
But we have accepted less than the cost of production for our agriculture commodities for over 20 to 30 years. We never had an adequate return for our investment. And we ask you to support Mr. LaRouche in his effort to feed the world.
Yes.
Not only your breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but for every person that we can reach. Take an airplane and fly over the United States next summer, or if you could have done it last summer, you'll see vast fields of 50 to 150 acres lying idle. They were idle last year. They were idle the year before. And this program of scarcity is not working in the world. We have hungry people here in our own country, walking down the streets of Washington. You go out there tonight, watch them sleeping out in this kind of weather. Isn't that awful?
Yes, that's awful.
We have become not the land of the free and the home of the brave. We have become the land of the meek and of the people that are mortgaged up to the hilt.
Yes.
And this is not right.
No.
We live in a constitutional republic. It is a dream of the world for people to govern themselves in justice and freedom and rightness. And we ask you to support our efforts at a parity price. And our time, I know you're all cold, but we want you to keep going forward. By going forward, even if you're going upstairs and you'll fall down, you'll be a little further than you were before.
Yeah!
Thank you so much.
George Gentry, a farmer whose own farm was foreclosed, former U.S. Senate candidate, Oklahoma.
How you doing, friend?
As a farmer, I'd like to welcome everyone here because there's a lot of eaters out here today.
Yeah, we all eat.
I'm getting hungry myself. This is an historic occasion. The United States of America is our promised land.
Yay!
But we have let enemies come into our halls of liberty and leadership unawares. They have corrupted our leaders and enslaved them with ignorance.
No, they bought them with
taught them the ways of Satan. Now, servants of Satan, these corrupt leaders have corrupted our nation and many of its citizens.
Yes.
They are reducing our promised land into a new sophisticated slavery, not with chains or whips, but with slavery imposed by poverty, minimum wages, drugs, pornography, world famine, food scarcity, financial usury.
Yes,
this is the most devious and evil form of slavery because it enslaves the dignity, hope, and spirit of man. So we must rise up. We must demand justice to once again reign in this land. We must demand that justice be done in the cause of the great world patriot Lyndon LaRouche. If we don't stand up for justice, we shall all perish.
Like food.
Our children will perish. And the light of freedom will perish from this world. So we will fight. We will claim the victory that is already ours.
Yes, it is. In the name of the Lord.
We will have courage, for the United States of America is our promised land.
Now, Linwood Brown, a farmer from Lawrenceville, Virginia. Linwood.
Said I don't look like a farmer. First of all, I'd like to say it's an honor and a pleasure to be here today. I'm a small farmer out in Warfield, Virginia, in Brunswick County. My buddy asked me when I come up here, I said, Lil, you feel nervous or afraid? I told him a whole lot afraid when I go in the FHA office. I don't know what they'll do or what they'll say. About 30 days ago, 80,000 farmers received notice for foreclosure. I'm one of the person in the 80,000. I would like to thank all the people from Brunswick County. I'd like to thank all the people all over the world here supporting this rally. But again, I like to say this is a real place once again. And I would like to say that you should give yourself a big round of applause for being here. I thank you.
I'm now calling Mel Klinetsky, who is the man who coordinated the building of this march, and who will tell you where we're marching on to from here. Mel Klinetsky.
Well, I'd like to thank all of you for coming. In the process of building for this march, we had a whole series of freedom caravans and tractorcades throughout the country. We had 120 buses coming from the north, from the south, from the east and the west of this country. We have many, many different countries represented, all who are coming together under the banner of freedom and justice, economic freedom, political freedom, judicial freedom. We have, in this building process, started an effort which it will not stop today. This is a springboard for further action, for further activity. As we gather as a host of people, we have the memory of those founding fathers who fought for this country, who created a nation which was looked upon as a temple of liberty and a beacon of hope for all mankind. And it is the dreams of those forefathers and the aspirations of the billions of souls yet to be born that we have a responsibility to. We have to take this march, we have to take this process, and we have to turn it into economic justice, turn it into political justice. We cannot tolerate a situation where thousands of people are dying in the streets. You didn't even have that in the last Depression. You have it now. You have thousands of people that are homeless in New York City.
Out of job.
You have people who are lining up in the hospitals because they don't have enough hospital beds. You have economic injustice. You have farms that are going out of business. And we have a responsibility here, gathered right now, between the Washington Monument and the White House, to carry forward the dream that built this country, to carry it forward tomorrow into the next generation. As I said, this is just the beginning. We have a lot of work to do. We appreciate your efforts, and we'll be back.
God bless.
Thank you.
We have, as a final message, a very important song to sing. This is the song selected by Lyndon LaRouche as the theme song of the international resistance against tyranny. It was written almost 150 years ago in the land of Italy by Giuseppe Verdi for the opera Nabucco, at a time when his country was occupied under foreign occupation by the tyranny of the Habsburg monarchy. This song is a chorus of Hebrew slaves singing and longing for freedom. It uses the words of the Psalms of the Old Testament, of the Hebrew slaves held captive in Babylonia, longing to be free in their native land. It unifies the call for freedom and the call for patriotism. Va pensiero.
Thank you.